Park Tae-soo held tight to his seat as the horizon's edge shook violently. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. Alarms screamed in his ears. Through the cracked window, he could see fire spreading across the left wing. "Captain, the hyperdrive is gone!" his navigator shouted from across the bridge. Tae-soo already knew. He had felt it the moment the engine exploded. The ship had dropped out of hyperspace in the middle of nowhere, and now gravity was pulling them down toward a gray, lifeless moon. "Everyone to the escape pods!" Tae-soo ordered. "Now!" His crew scrambled. 12 people, 12 lives under his command. He had to save them, but the ship was braking too fast. The hull cracked open. Air rushed out into space. Tae-soo saw 2 of his crew members pulled out through the hole before they could reach safety. Their screams lasted only a second before the silence of space took them. Tae-soo ran. His lungs burned. His legs felt heavy. He reached the escape pod bay just as another explosion ripped through the ship. The blast threw him forward and his head hit the metal wall. Everything went dark. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on cold, rocky ground. He groaned and tried to sit up. Pain shot through his ribs. His uniform was torn and covered in blood. Above him, the sky was dark purple, filled with strange stars he did not recognize. The escape pod had landed. Barely. Tae-soo looked around. The pod was destroyed, broken into pieces, scattered across the ground. He was alone. "Hello?" he called out. His voice was weak. "Is anyone there?" No answer. He forced himself to stand. Every part of his body hurt. He limped to the remains of the pod and searched through the wreckage. He found a medical kit, some emergency food, and a small communication device. He turned it on and set it to send a distress signal. "This is Captain Park Tae-soo of the Earth Federation vessel Horizon's Edge," he said into the device. "My ship is destroyed. I am the only survivor. Requesting immediate rescue. Location unknown. Please respond." He waited. Static. Nothing. Tae-soo looked up at the purple sky. He had no idea where he was. The moon had no plants, no water, no signs of life. Just rocks and dust as far as he could see. He sat down on a large stone and let out a long breath. His crew was dead. His ship was gone. He was stranded on an alien moon with no way home. But he was alive. And as long as he was alive, he would not give up. Hours passed. Tae-soo treated his wounds as best as he could. He ate a small amount of food and drank some water from the emergency supplies. He knew they would not last long. A few days at most. He was about to try the communication device again when he heard something. A low hum, coming from above. He looked up and saw lights in the sky. Ships. 3 of them. They were descending toward him fast. Tae-soo's heart beat faster. Rescue or something else. The ships landed a short distance away. They were not human ships. The design was strange, smooth, curved, and covered in glowing patterns. The metal looked almost like scales. The doors opened, and soldiers stepped out. They were tall, much taller than humans. Their skin was covered in shimmering scales of blue and silver. Their eyes were large and violet, with no visible pupils. They wore armor that looked like it was grown, not made. In their hands, they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Tae-soo did not move. He did not run. There was nowhere to go. The soldiers surrounded him. One of them spoke in a language he did not understand. Then the soldier touched a device on its wrist. And when it spoke again, Tae-soo could understand. "You are human," the soldier said. It was not a question. "Yes," Tae-soo replied. "I am Captain Park Tae-soo of the Earth Federation. My ship crashed. I need help." The soldier looked at him for a long moment. Then it turned to the others and gave an order. 2 soldiers grabbed Tae-soo by the arms and pulled him toward one of the ships. "Wait," Tae-soo said. "Where are you taking me?" The soldier did not answer. They pushed him inside the ship and locked his hands in metal restraints. The ship lifted off the ground and flew up through the purple sky, leaving the moon behind. Tae-Soo sat in silence. He did not know who these aliens were or where they were taking him. He only knew that he was now a prisoner. The journey took several hours. Through a small window, Tae-Soo watched as the ship flew past stars and planets he had never seen. Finally, they arrived at a large planet with swirling clouds of gold and green. The ship descended through the clouds and landed in a massive city built on floating platforms. The soldiers pulled him out of the ship and marched him through the streets. Aliens of the same species stopped and stared at him. They whispered to each other and pointed. Tae-Soo realized they had probably never seen a human before. They brought him to a palace. It was enormous, with towers that reached up into the clouds. The walls were covered in glowing symbols, and guards stood at every entrance. Inside, the palace was even more impressive. The floors were made of polished stone that reflected light like water. The ceilings were so high that Tae-Soo could barely see them. Everything was beautiful, but also cold. The soldiers led him to a great hall. At the far end, on a throne made of crystal, sat a figure. Tae-Soo stopped breathing. She was the most striking being he had ever seen. Her scales were darker than the others, a deep blue that was almost black. Her eyes glowed like twin violet stars. She wore a crown of silver and gemstones, and her long cloak flowed down the steps of the throne like water. She was their ruler, their empress. "Come closer, human," she said. Her voice was cold and clear. The soldiers pushed Tae-Soo forward until he stood at the base of the throne. He looked up at her and refused to look away. "I am Empress Nira of the Velari Empire," she said. "You have entered our territory without permission. Your ship carried weapons. By our law, you should be executed." Tae-Soo felt fear, but he did not show it. "My ship crashed. I did not come here by choice. And those weapons were for defense, nothing more." Nira tilted her head slightly. "You speak boldly for a creature so small and weak." "I am not weak," Tae-Soo said. Nira studied him for a long moment. Something changed in her eyes. Interest, perhaps, or curiosity. "No," she said slowly. "Perhaps you are not." She turned to her guards. "Take him to the royal compound. He will be held there until I decide what to do with him." The guards grabbed Tae-Soo again. As they pulled him away, he looked back at the Empress. She was still watching him, and she was smiling. Tae-Soo had been there for 3 days. His room was large and comfortable, with soft furniture and a wide window that looked out over the floating city. The food was good. The bed was soft. But the door was locked, and guards stood outside at all times. He spent his days looking out the window, watching the Velari go about their lives. They were a proud species. Everything they built was meant to show power and beauty. But Tae-Soo noticed something else. There were not many children. The streets were filled with adults, but young Velari were rare. On the 4th day, the door opened, and Empress Nira walked in. Tae-Soo stood up quickly. He had not expected her to come herself. She looked at him with those glowing violet eyes. Today, she wore a simpler dress, dark blue with silver edges. Without the crown, she looked less like a ruler and more like a woman. But the power in her eyes remained. "You are comfortable?" she asked. "I am a prisoner," Tae-Soo replied. "Comfort does not change that." Nira smiled slightly. "You continue to speak boldly. Most beings would beg for their lives by now. Would begging help? No. Then I will not waste my breath." Nira walked slowly around the room, looking at things but not really seeing them. She seemed to be thinking about something. "Tell me about humans," she said finally. Tae-Soo frowned. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Your planet, your people, how you live, how you survive." Tae-Soo did not understand why she wanted to know, but he saw no reason to refuse. He told her about Earth, the blue oceans, the green forests, the cities filled with millions of people. He told her about human history, the wars and the peace, the failures and the achievements. He told her how humans had spread across the stars, building colonies and making allies. Nira listened carefully. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Humans are weak," she said. "You have no scales for protection, no claws for fighting. Your bodies break easily, and yet you have spread across the galaxy faster than any species we know. How?" Taesu thought about the question. "We adapt," he said. "When something tries to destroy us, we find a way to survive. We change, we learn, we never stop." Nira nodded slowly. "Adaptability. Yes, that is what we have heard." She turned to face him directly. "That is why I have kept you alive." Taesu felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "What do you mean?" Nira walked to the window and looked out at her city. "The Velari Empire is dying," she said quietly. Taesu was surprised. From what he had seen, the Velari were powerful and advanced. He could not imagine them dying. "Our population is falling," Nira continued. "Every generation, fewer children are born. Those that are born are weaker than the generation before. Our scientists have studied the problem for centuries. The answer is always the same. Our genetics have become too narrow. We have not changed in thousands of years. We are too pure." She said the last word like it was poison. "What does this have to do with me?" Taesu asked, though he was beginning to understand. Nira turned back to him. "Humans are genetically diverse. Your species mixes and changes constantly. This makes you adaptable. It makes you strong in ways we are not." She stepped closer to him. "My advisors believe that mixing Velari genetics with human genetics could save our species. It could produce stronger children, healthier children." Taesu's heart beat faster. "You want to use me for breeding?" "I want you to help me produce an heir," Nira said. Her voice was calm, like she was discussing a business deal. "I am the last of the royal bloodline. If I do not have a child, my line ends. The empire will fall into chaos. Civil war. Millions will die." Taesu shook his head. "No." Nira's eyes narrowed. "No? I am not an animal. I will not be used like this." Nira stepped even closer. She was taller than him, and she looked down at him with cold fury. "You do not have a choice, human. You are in my empire, under my law. I could take what I want by force." Taesu did not step back. He met her eyes and held them. "Then do it. But know that any child born that way will be born from violence. Is that the legacy you want for your heir? Is that the future you want for your empire?" Nira stared at him. For a moment, he thought she would strike him. But then something changed in her face. The anger faded. In its place was something he did not expect. Respect. "You are brave," she said quietly. "Foolish, but brave." "I have been called worse." Nira stepped back. She took a deep breath and seemed to calm herself. "I will give you time to think about my offer. In return for your help, I will give you your freedom. A ship, safe passage back to Earth space. You will be rewarded beyond anything you can imagine. And if I still refuse?" Nira's expression hardened again. "Then you will remain here, forever. You will never see your home again." She turned and walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back at him one more time. "Think carefully, Captain Park. You have 1 week." The door closed behind her. The lock clicked. Taesu sat down on the bed and put his head in his hands. He thought about his home, his family, his friends. He thought about Earth so far away. He thought about Nira. She was cold and ruthless. She had threatened him and tried to use him. But he had also seen something else in her eyes. Fear, loneliness, the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. She was not just a tyrant. She was a leader trying to save her people. That did not make her offer right. It did not make him willing to accept it, but it made him understand her. Over the next few days, Tae-Soo thought about his situation. He tried to find ways to escape, but the compound was too well guarded. He tried to contact the Earth Federation, but all communication was blocked. He was trapped. On the 5th day, he asked to see the Empress. The guards brought him to a private garden inside the palace. It was filled with strange and beautiful plants. Flowers that glowed, trees with silver leaves, vines that moved on their own. Nira was sitting on a stone bench alone. She looked up when he entered. "Have you made your decision?" Tae-Soo sat down across from her. "I want to understand something first. Why me? There must be other humans in the galaxy. Why not find one who is willing?" Nira looked away. "There are very few humans in Velari space, and those we have found were not suitable." Suitable? They were weak, cowardly. They did not have what I need. She looked at him again. "You are different. I saw it the moment you stood before my throne. You have strength, spirit. You did not beg. You did not break." She paused. "I want my child to have that strength." Tae-Soo was quiet for a moment. It was strange. She had kidnapped him and imprisoned him, but her words felt almost like a compliment. "I will not be your prisoner," he said finally. "Then what do you want?" Tae-Soo looked at her directly. "If I do this, I do it as a free man. I will not be kept in a cage. I will not be treated like property. And when it is done, you will let me leave." Nira studied him for a long time. "You ask for much. I am offering much." Nira stood up. She walked to a nearby flower and touched its glowing petals. She seemed to be thinking deeply. "Very well," she said at last. "You will have your freedom within the palace. You may go where you wish, speak with whom you wish, and when the child is born, you may leave." Tae-Soo stood up as well. "Then we have a deal." Nira turned to face him. She extended her hand in the human way. She had done her research. Tae-Soo took it. Her hand was cool and smooth, covered in tiny scales, but her grip was strong. "Do not make me regret this, Captain Park," she said. Tae-Soo shook her hand firmly. "Do not make me regret it either, Empress." For the first time, something that was almost a smile crossed Nira's face. It was not trust. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Tae-Soo was no longer kept in his room. True to her word, Nira had given him freedom to walk the palace grounds. He explored the gardens, the libraries, the great halls filled with art and history. Guards still followed him everywhere, but they kept their distance. The Velari who lived and worked in the palace watched him with curiosity. Some looked at him with disgust. A lesser species walking among them. Others seemed interested, even friendly. A few tried to speak with him and learn about humans. But it was Nira who came to see him most often. At first, her visits were formal. She would ask about human biology, culture, and history. She wanted to understand everything about his species. Tae-Soo answered her questions honestly, and in return, he asked his own questions about the Velari. He learned that they were an ancient species, older than humans by thousands of years. They had built a great empire across dozens of star systems. They valued strength, honor, and bloodline above all else. Family was everything. He also learned that Nira had no family left. Her parents had died when she was young. She had no brothers or sisters. She had ruled alone for nearly 50 years. 50 years? Tae-Soo said, surprised. "How old are you?" Nira looked at him with a hint of amusement. "By your counting, I am 212 years old." Tae-Soo stared at her. She did not look old at all. If she were human, he would have guessed she was in her 30s. Velari live much longer than humans, she explained. Our average lifespan is 500 years. Some have lived to 700. Tesu shook his head in wonder. And you have been alone all this time? No partner? No mate? Nira's expression became distant. There were candidates, political matches, alliances through marriage, but none were suitable, none were strong enough. She looked at him. Velari do not mate for love, Captain. We mate for power, for legacy. Emotion has no place in such decisions. Tesu frowned. That sounds lonely. Nira did not respond. But something flickered in her violet eyes. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. As the weeks continued, their conversations became less formal. Nira began to visit him in the evenings, when her duties were done. They would walk together in the gardens or sit in the library and talk. She asked him about human relationships, about love. Humans choose their mates based on feeling? She asked one evening. They were sitting in the garden, watching the twin moons rise over the city. Most of the time, yes, Tesu said. We fall in love. We feel a connection with someone that goes beyond logic or politics. It is not always smart. Sometimes it causes problems, but it is how we are. And this, love. What does it feel like? Tesu thought about the question. It is hard to explain. It is like finding a part of yourself you did not know was missing. When you are with that person, you feel complete. You want to protect them. You want to make them happy. Their pain becomes your pain. Their joy becomes your joy. Nira was quiet for a long time. That sounds like weakness, she said finally. To care so much for another that their pain becomes yours. Maybe, Tesu admitted, but it is also strength. When you love someone, you will do anything for them. You become braver than you ever thought possible. Nira looked at him with an expression he could not read. Then she stood up. It is late. I should go. She left without another word. That night, Tesu lay awake thinking about her. She was cold and distant. But he was beginning to see past that. Beneath the armor was a woman who had never been taught to feel, who had never been allowed to be vulnerable, who had carried the weight of an empire her entire life without anyone to share it with. He felt sorry for her, and strangely, he felt drawn to her. A few nights later, everything changed. Tesu was asleep when he heard the alarms. He jumped out of bed and ran to the window. In the distance, he could see fire and smoke. Ships were flying over the city, and the sounds of weapons filled the air. The door to his room burst open. A guard stood there looking panicked. "What is happening?" Tesu demanded. "Assassination attempt," the guard said. "The Empress. Rebels attacked her convoy. We must move you to safety." "Where is she? Is she alive?" "I do not know. Please, you must come with me." Tesu followed the guard through the palace. Everywhere soldiers were running. Alarms blared. He could hear shouting and the sound of fighting in the distance. They reached a safe room deep inside the palace. The guard locked the door and stood watch. Tesu paced the room. He could not stop thinking about Nira. Was she hurt? Was she dead? The thought of her dying made his chest feel tight. He realized with surprise that he cared about her, more than he should. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, the door opened. Nira walked in. She was alive, but she was hurt. Her arm was burned and there was blood on her face. Her dress was torn and covered in ash. She looked exhausted. "You are hurt," Tesu said. He went to her immediately. "It is nothing," Nira said, but her voice was weak. "Sit down. Let me help." For a moment it looked like she would refuse, but then her legs seemed to give out, and she sat down heavily on a chair. Tesu found a medical kit in the room. He knelt beside her and began to clean and treat her wounds. The burn on her arm was bad. She must have been in great pain, but she made no sound. "Who did this?" he asked as he worked. "A faction that opposes my rule," Nira said. They believe I am weak. They want a new leader." She laughed bitterly. "Perhaps they are right." "They are not right," Tae-Su said firmly. "You are not weak." Nira looked at him. Her violet eyes were tired. But something else was there too. Surprise, gratitude. "Why do you care?" she asked. "I kidnapped you. I forced you into this arrangement. You should want me dead." Tae-Su finished wrapping her arm. He looked up at her. "Maybe I should, but I do not." "Why?" He thought about the question. The answer was complicated. He was not sure he fully understood it himself. "Because I see who you are," he said finally. "Not just the Empress. The woman. You are trying to save your people. You carry everything alone. You have never had anyone to share your burden." He paused. "That is not weakness. That is strength. But strength does not mean you have to suffer alone." Nira stared at him. For the first time since he had met her, she looked truly vulnerable. Her eyes became wet, though no tears fell. "I do not know how to be anything else," she whispered. Tae-Su reached out and took her hand. "Then learn. Let me help you." They sat there in silence, her hand in his. Something shifted between them. The wall that Nira had built around herself cracked, just a little. She did not pull away. In the days that followed, Nira recovered from her injuries. The rebels were captured and executed, but her relationship with Tae-Su was not the same as before. She came to him more often. She spoke to him more openly. She asked about his life, his dreams, his fears. And she began to share her own. She told him about her childhood, about her parents who had loved her in their own way but had always put the empire first, about the pressure of being heir, about the loneliness of ruling. Tae-Su listened. He did not judge. He did not try to fix her problems. He simply listened and let her know she was heard. One night, they were alone in the garden. The moons were full, and the flowers glowed softly around them. "Tae-Su," Nira said. It was the first time she had used his name. "Yes." She looked at him with an expression he had not seen before. It was open, honest, real. "I do not want this to be just an arrangement anymore," she said. Tae-Su felt his heart beat faster. "What do you want it to be?" Nira moved closer to him. She raised her hand and touched his face gently. "I want it to be a choice," she said. "My choice. And yours." Tae-Su looked into her eyes. He saw the Empress who had frightened him. He saw the woman who had fascinated him. And he saw something new, a person who was learning to love for the first time. He made his choice. He kissed her. And she kissed him back. Under the light of the twin moons, something new began. Not an arrangement. Something real. Everything was different now. Tae-Su was no longer just a guest in the palace. He was part of Nira's life. They spent their mornings together before she began her duties. They ate meals together. They talked late into the night about everything. Their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Tae-Su had never expected to feel this way. When he had first arrived on Velaris Prime, he had seen Nira as his captor. Now he saw her as something much more. She was still proud and powerful, but with him she was also gentle, curious, even playful sometimes. He was falling in love with her, and he believed she was falling in love with him. But love did not make their situation simple. Tae-Su was still human. Nira was still Empress. The Velari nobles whispered about them. Some were curious, others were angry. A few had even demanded that Nira send the human away. Nira ignored them. She had never cared what others thought. But Tae-Su knew the truth could not be ignored forever. One morning, Nira came to him with a serious expression on her face. "Come with me," she said. "There is something we must discuss." She led him through the palace to the medical wing. It was a large, clean space filled with advanced technology that Tae-Su did not fully understand. Doctors and scientists moved around, working quietly. Nira brought him to a private room. A doctor was waiting there, an older Velari female with silver scales and kind eyes. "This is Dr. Vela," Nira said. "She has been monitoring my health." Tesu felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Is something wrong?" Nira looked at him. Her expression was hard to read. "No, something is right." She took a breath. "Tesu, I am carrying a child." The words hit him like a wave. A child. His child. He did not know what to say. He stood there, frozen, his mind racing. Nira watched him closely. "You are quiet. Is this not what you expected?" Tesu swallowed hard. "It is what we planned. But planning and reality are different things." He looked at her. "Are you happy?" Nira considered the question. "I am hopeful. This child could save my people. It could be the future we have been waiting for." She paused. "But I am also afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Everything. The child, the birth, what comes after." She looked away. "I have never been a mother. I do not know how." Tesu stepped closer and took her hand. "No one knows how at first. You learn. And you will not be alone. I will be here." Nira looked at him with something like surprise. "You will stay?" "Of course I will stay. Did you think I would leave?" Nira did not answer, but the relief in her eyes was clear. Dr. Vela smiled. "The child is healthy, a hybrid as we hoped. It has traits from both species. This is very good news for the Empire." The news was supposed to stay private, but in a palace full of servants and spies, nothing stayed secret for long. Within a week, everyone knew. The Empress was carrying a hybrid child, a half-human heir. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some Velari celebrated. They saw the child as hope, a sign that their species could be saved. Messages of support came from across the Empire. People cheered in the streets, but others were furious. To them, the child was an abomination, a pollution of the pure Velari bloodline. They did not want a half-breed on the throne. They did not want humans mixing with their species. The loudest voice against the child belonged to Lord Kale, a powerful noble who had opposed Nira's rule for years. He controlled many ships and soldiers. He had allies throughout the government. Kyle demanded a public audience with the Empress. Nira granted it. The audience was held in the great hall of the palace. Hundreds of nobles gathered to watch. Tesu stood to the side, watching carefully. Kale was tall and heavily built with dark green scales and cold black eyes. He walked to the center of the hall and bowed to Nira, but the bow was shallow and mocking. "Empress," he said loudly so everyone could hear, "I come to speak on behalf of the true Velari. Those who care about our blood, our heritage, our future." "Then speak," Nira said calmly. "This child you carry is not Velari," Kale said. "It is a mongrel, a mistake. If you allow it to be born, you will destroy everything our ancestors built. The throne will be stained. The bloodline will be broken." Murmurs spread through the hall. Some nobles nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. Nira sat perfectly still on her throne. Her expression did not change. "And what would you have me do?" she asked. "End the pregnancy," Kale said bluntly. "Remove the human from the palace. Find a proper Velari mate and produce a proper heir. This is the only way to preserve our empire." The hall went silent. Tesu felt rage rise inside him. He wanted to step forward and confront Kyle, but he forced himself to stay still. This was Nira's battle. Nira stood up slowly. She descended the steps of the throne and walked toward Kyle. She stopped directly in front of him. "You speak of blood," she said. "You speak of heritage, but you understand nothing." Her voice was soft, but carried through the entire hall. "Our blood is dying. Our heritage is failing. Every generation, fewer children are born. Every generation, we grow weaker. If we do not change, we will disappear. Not in 1,000 years, not in 100, in decades. She stepped even closer to Kyle. This child is not a mistake. It is evolution. It is survival. And I will not let small-minded fools like you destroy our only hope. Kale's face twisted with anger. You are not fit to rule. You have betrayed your own kind for a lesser species. Nira moved so fast that Tae-Soo barely saw it. One moment she was standing in front of Kyle. The next, her clawed hand was around his throat. Say that again, she whispered. I dare you. Kyle's eyes went wide. He tried to speak but could only choke. The guards around the hall moved forward, but Nira raised her other hand to stop them. Let this be a lesson, she said to everyone watching. I am Empress. My word is law. Anyone who threatens my child threatens the future of the Velari, and I will destroy them. She released Kyle, and he fell to the floor, gasping for breath. Remove him, Nira ordered. Guards grabbed Kyle and dragged him out of the hall. He looked back at Nira with pure hatred in his eyes. Nira turned to the assembled nobles. This matter is closed. The child will be born. The child will be heir. If anyone wishes to challenge this, they may challenge me directly. No one spoke. Nira returned to her throne. The audience was over. That night, Tae-Soo found Nira alone in her chambers. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city. Her hands were trembling. Nira, he said gently. She did not turn around. He will not stop. Kyle has followers. He will try again. Then we will be ready. Nira shook her head. You do not understand. This is not just about him. Half the Empire thinks like he does. They see our child as a monster. They will never accept it. Tae-Soo walked to her and put his hands on her shoulders. Then we make them accept it. We show them that this child is not a threat. It is a gift. Nira finally turned to face him. Her eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion. I am so tired, Tae-Soo, she whispered. I have fought my whole life. I do not know if I can fight any more. Tae-Soo pulled her into his arms and held her. Then let me fight with you. That is what partners do. Nira held him back, tight, like he was the only thing keeping her standing. They stayed like that for a long time. But even as Tae-Soo comforted her, a cold feeling settled in his chest. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and their child had not even been born yet, and already it had enemies. Nira's pregnancy progressed, but so did the unrest. Lord Kale had been humiliated in front of the court, but he had not been defeated. He gathered his allies in secret. Whispers of rebellion spread through the empire like poison. Tae-Soo watched it all with growing concern. He loved Nira. He wanted to be with her. But he could not ignore what he was seeing. The Velari Empire was built on fear. Nira ruled with absolute power. Those who opposed her were silenced, imprisoned, or killed. Her enemies feared her, but they did not respect her. And fear without respect always led to rebellion. He tried to talk to her about it. He suggested that she show mercy to her enemies, that she try to win them over instead of crushing them. Nira refused. Mercy is weakness, she said. If I show mercy, they will think I am soft. They will attack harder. And if you keep killing them, more will rise to take their place. Tae-Soo argued. You cannot execute your way to peace. I have ruled this empire for 50 years. I know my people better than you do. Maybe, but you asked me to help you see things differently. This is me helping. Nira's eyes flashed with anger. For a moment, Tae-Soo thought they would argue, but then she turned away. I will consider your words, she said coldly. Leave me now. Tae-Soo left, but the conversation stayed with him. He loved Nira, but he was beginning to see the truth clearly. She would not change. She did not know how. And he was not sure he could live in a world built on violence and fear. He began to think about leaving. The thought made him feel sick. Nira was carrying his child. He could not abandon them, but he also could not stay in a palace where he felt like a prisoner again. Not in body, but in spirit. One night he was walking through the lower levels of the palace when a servant approached him. She was young, with pale blue scales and nervous eyes. "Captain Park," she whispered, "I have a message for you, from people who want to help you." Tae-Soo frowned. "Help me with what?" "To leave, to escape, before it is too late." She pressed a small device into his hand and hurried away before he could respond. Tae-Soo went back to his room and examined the device. It was a communicator. He activated it, and a voice came through, distorted to hide the speaker's identity. "Captain Park, we know who you are. We know you are not here by choice. We can help you return to Earth space." Tae-Soo felt his heart pound. "Who are you?" "We are the Resistance. We oppose the Empress and her rule. We believe in freedom and change, not tyranny. You are rebels. We are Velari who want a better future, just like you." Tae-Soo was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Nira. He thought about the child. He thought about the life he was living, comfortable but controlled. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Information, security codes. The Empress's schedule. Anything that will help us bring her down." Tae-Soo shook his head. "I will not betray her." "Then we cannot help you escape." "Wait." Tae-Soo thought quickly. "I will not give you information that will put her life in danger, but if you can get me out of the palace, I will come with you. I just want to go home." The voice was silent for a moment. "We will consider this. Stay ready. When the time comes, we will contact you." The communicator went dead. Tae-Soo hid the device and lay down on his bed. His mind was racing. Was he really going to do this? Was he really going to run away from the woman he loved and the child she carried? He thought about what his life would be like if he stayed. A human living among Velari who hated him, raising a child in a palace built on blood. Watching Nira become harder and more ruthless as the years passed. It was not the life he wanted. But could he live with himself if he left? Days passed. The Resistance did not contact him. Tae-Soo began to wonder if they had changed their minds. Then, one morning, a message came. A festival was happening in 3 days, a celebration of the moons. Security would be light. If Tae-Soo wanted to leave, this was his chance. He had to decide. That night, he went to Nira. She was sitting in her garden looking at the stars. Her belly had grown and she moved more slowly now, but she was still beautiful, still powerful. "Nira," he said, "I need to talk to you." She looked at him and smiled. "Come, sit with me." He sat beside her. He tried to find the words, but they would not come. "What is wrong?" Nira asked. She could always tell when something was bothering him. Tae-Soo took a deep breath. "I have been thinking about us, about our future, and I do not know if I can stay here." Nira's smile faded. "What do you mean?" "I love you, Nira. You know that. But I do not love this place. I do not love what I see here. The fear, the violence, the control. I grew up believing in freedom, in choice. I cannot raise our child in a world without those things." Nira stood up. Her expression was hard. "You want to leave. I want us to build something different. Together. A life where our child can grow up free, where they can choose their own path." "This is the path," Nira said sharply. "This empire, this throne. Our child will rule all of it one day. And what if they do not want to rule? What if they want something else? They will want what they are taught to want." Tae-Soo shook his head. "That is exactly what I am afraid of." Nira stepped closer to him. Her violet eyes were burning. You knew what I was when you agreed to this. You knew what this empire was. You cannot change the rules now. I am not trying to change the rules. I am trying to show you that there are other ways to live. There are no other ways. Not for me. Not for our child. She grabbed his arm tightly. If you leave, you will never see this child. Never. I will not allow it. Tae-Soo looked at her hand on his arm. He remembered when her touch had made him feel safe. Now it felt like a chain. Is that how this works? He asked quietly. You keep me here by force? Neera's grip loosened. Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe. But it was gone quickly. I keep you here because you are mine, she said. The child is mine. This is my empire, and I will protect it all, no matter what. She turned and walked away, leaving Tae-Soo alone in the garden. That night, he made his decision. He would leave. The night of the festival came. The city was full of lights and music. Fireworks exploded over the floating platforms. Everyone was celebrating. Tae-Soo walked through the crowds, following the instructions the resistance had given him. He wore simple clothes and kept his head down. No one paid attention to him, just another body in the crowd. He reached the meeting point, a small ship hangar at the edge of the city. Two figures were waiting for him, wrapped in dark cloaks. Captain Park, one of them said. You came. I am here. Let us go. They led him to a small transport ship. The engines were already running. Tae-Soo stepped toward the ramp and stopped. Neera was standing behind him. She was alone, no guards, no soldiers, just her in a simple dress, her belly swollen with their child. You thought I would not know? She said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were filled with fury. My spies are everywhere. I knew about the resistance. I knew about the escape. I knew everything. Tae-Soo turned to face her fully. Then why did you let me get this far? Neera stepped closer. Because I wanted to see if you would really do it, if you would really leave me. Her voice cracked just slightly. I wanted to believe you would not. Tae-Soo felt his heart break. Neera, do not. She held up her hand. Do not say you love me. Do not say you are sorry. I offered you everything, a throne, an empire, eternity beside me, and you chose to run. I chose freedom, Tae-Soo said. That is not the same as choosing to leave you. Neera laughed bitterly. It is exactly the same. They stood there in silence, the noise of the festival far away. Finally, Neera spoke again. Go! Tae-Soo stared at her. What? Go! Leave! Return to your human world. Her voice was hard as stone. But know this, when our child is born, you will come back. You will swear it to me now. Tae-Soo hesitated. Then he nodded. I swear it. Neera looked at him one last time. There was pain in her eyes, and love, and hate, all of it mixed together. Then go, she whispered. Before I change my mind. Tae-Soo turned and walked up the ramp. The ship lifted off and flew into the sky. He looked back through the window. Neera stood alone in the hangar, growing smaller and smaller until she disappeared. He was free, but he had never felt so empty. He returned to the Federation 3 months after leaving Valaris Prime. His report was classified at the highest level. Only a handful of officials knew where he had really been and what had really happened. To everyone else, he was simply a captain who had survived a crash in unknown space. They called him a hero. They gave him medals. They offered him a promotion and a new ship. Tae-Soo accepted none of it. He resigned from active duty. He moved to a quiet apartment in the city where he had grown up, near the ocean. He told people he needed time to recover from his ordeal, but the truth was simpler and more painful. He could not stop thinking about her, about them. Every night, he dreamed of Valaris Prime. The floating cities, the purple sky, the twin moons, and Nira, her violet eyes, her sharp voice, the rare moments when she let her guard down and smiled. He dreamed of the child. By now, it would have been born. A hybrid, half human, half Velari, his son or daughter, growing up in a palace on the other side of the galaxy, never knowing its father. Tae-Soo had told himself he left to be free, but freedom felt like a cage now. He was free to do anything he wanted, and all he wanted was to go back. His friends tried to help. His sister, Yoon-ji, visited him often. She brought food and talked about small things, the weather, her job, the neighbors. She tried to make him laugh. Tae-Soo smiled and nodded, but inside, he was far away. One night, Yoon-ji lost her patience. "You have to stop this," she said. "Whoever this woman is, whatever happened out there, you cannot live in the past forever. You have a life here. People who love you." Tae-Soo looked at her. "I have a child out there, Yoon-ji, a child I have never seen." Yoon-ji stared at him. He had not told her the full truth before. He told her now. Everything. Nira, the arrangement, the pregnancy, the escape. When he finished, Yoon-ji was quiet for a long time. "You should go back," she said finally. Tae-Soo shook his head. "Nira would never let me near the child. She was furious when I left. She sees me as a traitor." "Maybe, but you will never know unless you try." Yoon-ji took his hand. "You made a mistake, brother. You left because you were scared. But running away does not make fear go away. It just makes it worse." Tae-Soo knew she was right. He had known it from the moment he left Velaris Prime. But knowing something and acting on it were two different things. He did nothing. The days passed, then weeks, then months. Then everything changed. 1 year after his return to Earth, Tae-Soo received a message. It came through unofficial channels, a smuggler network that moved information between human and alien space. The message was simple. "The child is born, a daughter. She is named Yuna. She is in danger." Tae-Soo's heart stopped. He read the message again and again. A daughter, Yuna. That was a human name. Nira had given their child a human name, and she was in danger. He contacted the source of the message. It was a Velari merchant who traded in human space. He owed Tae-Soo a favor from long ago. "What kind of danger?" Tae-Soo demanded. "The Empire is falling apart," the merchant said. "Lord Kale has gathered an army. He calls himself the true emperor. He says the Empress has betrayed her people by producing a hybrid heir. He wants to overthrow her and destroy the child." "Where is the child now?" "In the palace with the Empress. But the palace is surrounded. Kyle's forces are closing in. It is only a matter of time before they break through." Tae-Soo felt cold fury rise inside him. Kyle, the same fool who had threatened Nira in the Great Hall, the same coward who called their daughter an abomination. "Can you get me to Velaris Prime?" Tae-Soo asked. The merchant hesitated. "It is dangerous. Kyle controls most of the space around the planet. Any ship that tries to enter will be destroyed." "Can you get me there or not?" A pause. Then, "There might be a way. A smuggler route through the asteroid belt. It is risky, but possible." "Do it." Tae-Soo did not pack. He did not say goodbye. He simply left. Yoon-ji found his note the next morning. "You were right. I am going back. I love you. Tell mother and father not to worry. I will see you again." He hoped that was true. The journey took 2 weeks. The smuggler's ship was small and fast, built for avoiding detection. They slipped through Kale's blockade by hiding in the shadow of passing asteroids and timing their moves carefully. When they finally emerged near Velaris Prime, Tae-Soo saw the war. Ships were fighting in orbit. Explosions lit up the darkness. On the planet below, cities were burning. The floating platforms were crumbling. The beautiful empire he remembered was tearing itself apart. "I cannot take you further," the smuggler said. "The landing zone is too hot. You will have to take an escape pod and drop yourself to the surface." Tae-Soo nodded. "Get as close as you can." The smuggler brought the ship near the palace district. It was the center of the fighting. Laser fire streaked across the sky. Buildings collapsed. Thousands were dying. Tae-Soo climbed into the escape pod. "Good luck, human," the smuggler said. "You are either very brave or very stupid. Probably both." The pod launched. Tae-Soo fell through the atmosphere, the pod shaking violently around him. He could see the palace below, damaged but still standing. Nira's flag still flew above it. She was holding out. The pod crashed in a courtyard near the palace walls. Tae-Soo kicked the door open and climbed out. His body ached, but nothing was broken. He was home. No, that was wrong. He was where he should have been all along. The palace gates were guarded by Nira's loyal soldiers. They recognized him immediately. "Captain Park," one of them said in shock, "we thought you were gone." "I came back," Tae-Soo said. "Where is the Empress?" "The throne room. She is commanding our defense, but we are losing. Kael's forces will break through within hours." Tae-Soo ran. He sprinted through the palace, past wounded soldiers and terrified servants. The building shook as explosions hit nearby. Smoke filled the air. He reached the throne room and threw open the doors. Nira stood in the center of the room, surrounded by generals and advisors. She was wearing armor now, dark blue scales over black metal. She looked like a warrior queen from ancient legends. And beside her, in a small protected crib, was a baby. Yuna. Tae-Soo walked into the room. The generals turned to look at him. Some raised weapons. Nira saw him. Her eyes went wide. For a moment, all the coldness fell away. She looked shocked, relieved, angry, happy, all at once. "Tae-Soo," she breathed. He walked past the guards, past the generals, past everyone. He stopped in front of her. "I am sorry," he said. "I was wrong to leave. I was scared and I ran. But I am not running anymore." Nira stared at him. He could not read her expression. Then she stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his. It was a Velari gesture of deep emotion, trust, love, reunion. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised I would." She pulled away and looked at him with fierce determination. "Then fight with me. Our daughter needs her father." Tae-Soo looked at the crib, at Yuna. She was small, with blue-gray skin and dark hair. Human and Velari perfectly mixed. She looked up at him with wide eyes, one violet, one brown, his daughter. He reached down and touched her tiny hand. She grabbed his finger and held on. "I will fight," Tae-Soo said, "for both of you." Nira smiled. It was a fierce smile, a warrior's smile. "Then let us show them what we can do together." Outside, Kael's army was breaking through the final defenses. The final battle was about to begin. Explosions shook the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Outside, Kael's forces had broken through the outer gates. Thousands of rebel soldiers poured into the palace grounds, hungry for blood. Tae-Soo stood beside Nira in the throne room, watching the battle reports come in. One by one, their defensive positions were overrun. Loyal soldiers were dying by the hundreds. "We cannot hold much longer," one of the generals said. "Empress, you must evacuate. Take the child and escape through the underground tunnels." "No," Nira said sharply. "I will not abandon my people. I will not run. If you die, the Empire dies with you. If I run, I do not deserve to rule." Tae-Soo understood her pride. He understood her courage, but he also saw the fear in her eyes when she looked at Yuna's crib. "Nira," he said quietly, "let me take Yuna to safety. You stay and fight. I will protect her with my life." Nira hesitated. It was the hardest decision she had ever made. She wanted to be with her daughter, but she also knew that her place was on the front line. She was Empress. If her soldiers saw her fighting, they would fight harder. "Swear to me," she said. "Swear that you will keep her safe." Taysu looked into her eyes. "I swear it." Nira nodded. She walked to the crib and looked down at their daughter. Yuna was awake but calm, her strange, mismatched eyes watching her mother. "I will come back for you," Nira whispered. "Both of you." She kissed the baby's forehead. Then she turned, drew her blade, and walked toward the door. "General," she commanded, "rally every soldier we have left. We meet them in the main courtyard." The general bowed. "Yes, Empress." Nira looked back at Taysu one last time. There was so much in that look. Love, fear, hope, and something else. Faith. She believed in him, finally, completely. Then she was gone. Taysu picked up Yuna carefully and held her against his chest. She was so small, so fragile, and the entire empire wanted her dead. "I will not let them touch you," he said to her. "I promise." He moved quickly through the palace, heading for the tunnels, but he did not get far. A group of rebel soldiers appeared in the corridor ahead. They saw him, saw the baby, and raised their weapons. "The human!" one of them shouted. "He has the hybrid! Stop him!" Taysu turned and ran. He was fast, faster than the Valari expected a human to be. He dodged through hallways, slid around corners, kicked open doors. But the soldiers were everywhere. He burst into a storage room and sealed the door behind him. He could hear them pounding on the other side. He looked around. There was another door at the far end of the room. He ran toward it and stopped. A Velari stepped through the door, tall, broad, wearing black armor decorated with red symbols. Lord Kyle. "Captain Park," Kyle said. His voice was cold and satisfied. "We finally meet properly." Taysu backed away, holding Yuna tighter. "Get out of my way." Kyle smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "You know I cannot do that. The abomination must die. It is the only way to save the Velari. She is a child. She has done nothing wrong. She exists. That is enough." Kyle drew his blade. It was long and curved, crackling with energy. "Give her to me, and I will kill you quickly. Refuse, and I will make it slow." Taysu's mind raced. He was unarmed. He was holding a baby. He was facing a warrior who had been training for 200 years. But he was also human, and humans did not give up. "You want her?" Taysu said. "Come and take her." Kale lunged. Taysu moved. He was not as strong as a Velari. He was not as fast, but he was unpredictable. He ducked under Kale's swing, spun to the side, and kicked over a heavy shelf. Crates and equipment crashed down on Kale, buying Taysu a few seconds. He ran. He made it to a balcony overlooking the main courtyard. Below, the battle raged. Nira was there, leading her soldiers against Kale's forces. She fought like a demon, her blade flashing, her voice shouting orders. She was magnificent, but she was losing. Kale's army was too large. For every rebel that fell, 3 more took their place. Nira's soldiers were being pushed back toward the palace walls. Then Kale appeared behind Taysu. "No more running," Kale said. He swung his blade. Taysu barely dodged. The blade cut across his shoulder and pain exploded through his body. He stumbled, nearly dropping Yuna. Kyle advanced. "You are pathetic. A weak, soft creature from a weak, soft species. How could the Empress lower herself to breed with something like you?" Taysu backed against the balcony railing. There was nowhere left to go. "Maybe I am weak," he said, "but I am still standing." Kale raised his blade for the killing blow, and Taysu jumped. He threw himself off the balcony, holding Yuna tight against his chest. They fell through the air, and Taysu twisted his body so he would hit the ground first, protecting the baby. He crashed onto a pile of rubble below. His back hit the stone. Something cracked. Pain shot through every part of his body, but he was alive, and Yuna was unhurt. Kyle roared from the balcony above. "Kill them! Kill them both!" Rebel soldiers rushed toward Tae-Su. He could not move. His body was broken. This was the end. Then a sound cut through the noise of battle. A horn, long and deep. Everyone stopped. On the horizon, ships appeared. Not rebel ships, not Imperial ships, Earth Federation ships, hundreds of them. A voice boomed across the battlefield. "This is Admiral Song of the Earth Federation Third Fleet. We are responding to a distress signal. All hostilities will cease immediately." Tae-Su laughed weakly. The communication device. He had activated it when he arrived on Valeris Prime. He had not known if anyone would come, but they had. They had come. Kyle's soldiers hesitated. The Federation was powerful, more powerful than the Velari. They had not expected human involvement. Nira saw her chance. "Attack!" she shouted. "Now! Drive them back!" Her soldiers surged forward with renewed strength. Kale's army, caught between the Imperial forces and the Federation fleet, began to fall apart. Soldiers surrendered. Officers fled. The rebellion was collapsing. Kale himself jumped down from the balcony and landed near Tae-Su. His face was twisted with rage. "This changes nothing," he snarled. "If I cannot have the Empire, no one will." He raised his blade to strike. A flash of blue light. Nira's blade cut through Kale's arm. His weapon fell to the ground. He screamed in pain. Nira stood over him, her eyes burning with cold fury. "You wanted to be Emperor," she said. "Instead, you will be nothing." She drove her blade through his chest. Kyle fell. He was dead before he hit the ground. The battle was over. Nira dropped her weapon and rushed to Tae-Su. He was still lying on the rubble, unable to move. "Tae-Su," she said, her voice filled with fear. "Tae-Su, stay with me." He looked up at her and smiled weakly. "Yuna is safe." Nira took the baby from his arms. She held Yuna close, tears falling down her scaled cheeks. "You did it," she whispered. "You kept your promise." Tae-Su wanted to respond, but darkness was closing in around him. The last thing he saw before he passed out was Nira's face, looking at him with something he had never seen before. Complete love. When Tae-Su woke, he was in a medical bay. His wounds had been treated. His broken bones were healing in a regeneration machine. He would recover fully. Nira was sitting beside his bed, holding Yuna. "The war is over," she said. "Kyle's army has surrendered. The rebellion is finished." Tae-Su nodded slowly. "And the Federation? They have agreed to help us rebuild. In exchange, we will open trade and diplomatic relations with Earth." She smiled slightly. "It seems you have made me an ally of your species. They are your daughter's species, too." Nira looked at Yuna. The baby was sleeping peacefully, unaware of everything that had happened. "Yes," Nira said softly. "They are." Over the following months, the Velari Empire changed. Nira remained empress, but she ruled differently now. She listened to her people more. She showed mercy to her enemies. She began to build a future based on hope instead of fear. Tae-Su stayed beside her. He was not emperor, he did not want to be, but he was her partner, her advisor, her love, and he was Yuna's father. The hybrid princess became a symbol of the new Velari Empire. Some still hated her, but many more saw her as hope, proof that change was possible. 1 year after the war, Nira stood before her people to make a proclamation. Tae-Su stood beside her, holding Yuna in his arms. "My people," Nira said, "we have survived war, we have survived rebellion, we have survived ourselves, and we are still here, because we chose to change, because we chose to grow, because we chose to be something new." She looked at Tae-Su and Yuna. "This child is the future. Not because she is mine, not because she is his, but because she is ours, all of ours. She is Velari. She is human. She is something that has never existed before. And she will lead us to places we have never been." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then slowly they began to cheer. It was not everyone. It would take time for all of them to accept the new world. But it was a beginning. That night, Tai-Su and Nira stood in the garden where they had first begun to fall in love. Yuna was sleeping in her crib nearby, peaceful and content. "Do you regret coming back?" Nira asked. Tai-Su thought about the question. He thought about everything he had given up: Earth, his family, his old life. Then he looked at Nira, at Yuna. "No," he said. "This is where I belong." Nira leaned against him. He put his arm around her. Above them, the twin moons rose into the purple sky. Somewhere out there, among the stars, the universe continued its endless turning. Empires rose and fell. Species lived and died. Time moved forward, unstoppable. But here, in this moment, there was peace, and there was love. And that was enough.